Hi everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Pratima Rodriguez and I'm the founder of TrueBay India. TrueBay is India's first Indian-owned premium Ashtanga Yoga workshop and retreat organizer, bringing top international Ashtanga Yoga teachers to India since Jan 2019. My guest this week in this two-part series is Deepika Mehta. So before I add Deepika Mehta, I would like to read out a short introduction about her. A near-death rock climbing accident from 40 feet in 1997 left Deepika Mehta bedridden for close to 2 years. And it was during this time that she started delving into the spiritual to empower herself and find hope and inspiration. She found the book Autobiography of a Yogi, and that sparked her interest. She started looking around for forms of yoga that could help her heal herself. Deepika found herself at the Shivananda Yoga Ashram in Kerala, where she did a TTC, but it was here that she saw a practitioner doing Ashtanga Yoga and was mesmerized and wanted to learn more. From there, she was led to the practice of Ashtanga Yoga to Mysore and to meeting her first teacher, Sri K. Patabi Joyce. She has also traveled to various parts of the world, studying with various masters like Richard Freeman, Dana Kinsberg, Prem Karlisi, Lino, and Rolf. Deepika is an authorized level 2 teacher and a student of Sri Sharad Joyce, from whom she is learning the Advanced A series. Deepika has had her own TV show called Yoga City on NDTV, as well as teaching India's most famous celebrities, including Bollywood stars like Aishwarya Rai, Priyanka Chopra, Katrina Kaif, Jacqueline Fernandez, etc. She was invited to teach at a YPO forum in Bhutan. She has also been a master trainer on the show The Biggest Loser in India. Deepika has been featured in various publications and has given a dance yoga presentation and talk at a TEDx event at the UN headquarters in New York. In today's times, after Sri Sharad Joyce, the living lineage holder of Ashtanga Yoga, Deepika is one of India's most famous Ashtanga Yoga teachers. She has the beautiful gift of making her students push their mental and physical limits and helps them tap deeper to find their own excellence. Deepika teaches workshops and retreats alongside her husband Mark Roberts, a certified Ashtanga Yoga teacher. Deepika and Mark are new first-time parents to their adorable 3-month-old daughter, Devi Tara. I'm going to try and add Deepika now. We'll just wait while Deepika gets connected. Hi! I have to stop myself from climbing through the screen and hugging you. How are you?
We're going to have to give virtual hugs for a long time.
I know. How are you? And congratulations on being a new mama.
Thank you. I'm seeing you for the first time, like live like this.
We've been talking, but I think seeing you like this is after eons.
I know, very, very long.
So in the interest of time, and also I just want to give a heads up to all the viewers. Deepika has a 3-month baby, so in case her baby cries and is a hungry one, and
I know.
Deepika needs to be a mother dairy, she may need to go, so we may need to cut this conversation a bit abruptly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start right in. We're good. This is a 2-part conversation with Deepika. Okay. In the first part, we're going to talk about your growing up years, where you grew up, finding yoga, and finding love, happiness, and marriage with Mark. So we'll start right from the beginning. Tell me, where were you born? Where were you raised? Tell me about your family. Where did you study?
Hi, Anirudh. So I was born in Calcutta, and my dad had a job where he was traveling a lot. So then we were in Vizag for a long time. Have you heard?
Your dad was a hotelier.
Yeah, and also he was managing this the whole business of like this APJ group. So that was steel, you know, they had lots of, they had various different units plus the hotel, Park Hotel. So we were in Vishakhapatnam for a very long time. And then after that, we moved to Hyderabad. And then, you know, I went to a boarding school and, you know, Bombay. And then after that, just traveling a lot.
That's a very zipped answer. So
Yeah,
tell
because
me,
there was a lot of travel.
there was a lot of travel. So how
Yeah.
did you stayed in a town called Dehradun, which is, for viewers who are not from India, which is in the foothills of the Himalayas. So you
Yeah.
lived and studied there, and you went to a boarding school there.
I went to a boarding school there called Vellum Girls.
Okay, and is that where your love for trekking and hiking happened, or
Oh, yes. So I was in I was in Hyderabad for a very long time, and
Okay.
I don't know if I can say a privileged life, but I was leading a kind of like a life in a bubble. You know, like it was just about a lot about boys and the usual stuff. And for some reason, I always felt that was not enough for me. I don't know why, even though I was in this bubble, everybody, I mean, not about anybody else, but there was the bubble. And I felt like I
Correct.
wanted to get out of this bubble and step out and kind of change my perspective, even though I was really young back then. And I don't know why I wanted to go to this boarding school for some reason. And so I told my parents I want to go to the boarding school. And so when I joined this boarding, it was an all girls. And it's an incredible school. I feel like I owe a lot of everything that I am to this school because firstly it was all girls, so the boys were totally like that. None
In
of that
Wellum's
mattered
boys.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was not about how popular you are and what you're doing and all of that. All that mattered was your personality and not even how well you do in class. And it was a lot about the extracurricular. And honestly, I was terrible at everything. There was nothing that I was good at.
That's very hard to believe.
I mean, I was good at studies, but that didn't matter. And you know, when you join a boarding school and you're away from your family and you have nobody, you need to make friends. And so like it was like a survival instinct. I needed to get at least be part of a club. And there was like the music club, there was a trekking club and all of that. And this boarding school was super, super strict. So the only way you could get tuck, which means food from outside,
Yeah.
and the only way you could step out of school was if you were part of the Adventure Society. Because you would get a
rebel
bottle
child,
of,
and you had already figured out how to do jugaad, which is
yeah,
the Indian
so you would
innovation.
get a bottle of Horlicks if you were part of this Adventure Society. So just for this bottle of Horlicks, because the food sucked in this hotel, in this school, just
Boarding.
to get that bottle of Horlicks, I said, okay, let me join this Adventure Society. Even though I was okay. I was okay at sports, but I was not like nothing compared to the level of the school. Everybody, it was a pretty like high level. And so I joined this Adventure Society, and I remember when for my first run, we would have to go for like a 5-kilometer run in the morning, and Dehradun was really cold. And waking up at 5 o'clock, I didn't have that kind of discipline. So waking up at 5 a.m. and going for this run, I remember so clearly that first run, I reached like probably 45 minutes after every single girl. It was an all-girls school. It was like I reached last 45 minutes after everybody had reached. They thought I was not coming back or whatever. And I remember also the first trek I did. You've trekked with me, so you know how I trek now, right? I'm like
You're like a mountain goat.
I'm like a
So
good
it's
car,
hard to believe that you were last in the race, because you're like, everybody's reached the everyone's puffing and puffing. For those who don't know, Deepika is like a mountain goat. She will run up the mountain despite arthritis in her ankle and a broken ankle. She will run up that mountain and then be chilling with a chai while all of us are catching our breath. So it's tough to believe that you were last in the race.
Yeah, and also then our first trek was, we trekked from Dehradun to Mussoorie, which was like basically like an hour or whatever, an hour kind of walk. And I started walking again, this trek everybody else reaches, and I reached like probably, again, maybe 45 minutes after everybody reached. And it was like a wake up call for me. I was like, gosh, I'm terrible at this. If I want to get popular, it's so strange, right? Like if I want to have friends, I'm going to have to get good at this. So for the
Right.
next how many ever months, I just kind of somehow, I don't know, it was like a survival instinct. Even though I didn't have the discipline, I just stuck to this every day. And you know, I think something within me changed. I started loving trekking. Like it became a huge love. I went on to do a lot of trekking. Like we did a lot of expeditions. We went to glaciers. I eventually did. I I eventually did a mountaineering course, which is at a place called NIM, which is where people who go to do Everest and stuff like this, you know, where they've been. So, you know, it was like a huge turning point. And I just developed, like, I know you love the mountains. And I just changed. There's something within me which changed. I just started loving this, you know. And also, I guess it brought out this kind of like sporty, you know, like love
Cycling.
for athletics and running and all of this kind of stuff. So
So tell
that was
me,
a turning point for me.
that was the turning point for you.
Yeah.
So you did the mountaineering course, and then post which you went rock climbing.
Yeah.
And can you talk about how the accident happened? You know, I know it's hard for you. It's a very painful
No, I mean,
part of you.
I don't have any. Yeah, I've done the basic mountaineering course. Somebody just asked me that at NIM. Yeah, it's a month-long course, and I still remember. It's really intense, right? From NIM Uttarkashi. Yeah. It's very intense. Coming back to that, I still remember how intense it was. Yeah, so coming back to the my accident, I mean, I try not to attach too much to it because, you know, it's very easy for it to become the story of your life and like feel like a victim. But in short, basically, I did this mountaineering course, and it sounds so funny now. I mean, it's like 20 years back, but I really wanted to be a mountaineer. And I bought all this gear. I still have it actually from North Face. I have like everything possible, and I wanted to do Everest. It was quite bizarre, but I wanted to do Everest, and you know, and I so I started doing, in this part of this course, there's like rock climbing, which is bouldering where you don't need equipment. So I started bouldering wherever I could find rocks. And I remember this one time I climbed this rock. It was really high. It was like, you know, for some reason I was able to climb it without any equipment, but there was no way to come down because I didn't have any ropes. I was not even wearing the right shoes. And I was stuck there for a long time on this rock. And then eventually, as I was trying to come down, I fell. And it was a really high rock. It must have been 35, 40 feet. And I remember so clearly this kind of, it's still in my body, I think more in my ankle than in my arm. I fell down. I remember so clearly my arm shattering first and then my ankle. Because I tried to break the fall with my arm, and so my arm was like shattered, and then my ankle. And you know, from then on was a long journey because somebody had to come to get me, and then I was in the hospital for a very long time. And then you know, then from then on was a long struggle because for 2 years from then on I was, you know, finding a way to get back to being able to walk.
So you've mentioned in that period when you you know, when you were in bed, you used to journal, and you used to write how many steps you used to take. Can you talk about that?
Again, I think just before that, I had already started getting quite passionate about trekking. So, you know, there was like, plus I was just, I think, 21. So restless. And then, you know, you're in bed for a year, and all my friends were in Delhi because I was studying in Delhi University in DU. And then suddenly I was in Hyderabad, you know, all by myself, and no friends. And, you know, there was like a deep sadness. I don't know if I could call it depression. I remember waking up in the morning and not finding a reason to want to, like, there was no reason, you know, like, what's the purpose if I'm just going to be in bed? And so I remember I was just finding a way, like there was no internet, there was nothing, right? So I was just finding a way, and I had not had any exposure to spirituality by then. And I remember I found this book. I think somebody told me about pranic healing. And then from there on, I found this book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And he talks a lot about miracles and energy and manifestation. And you know, that book somehow, when I read it, it just sparked something within me. And I think that changed something. And then I just had this overwhelming willpower to kind of want to get back. And so I started, you know, like I remember I would eventually, after the wheelchair, I would have, you know, like crutches. And every day in my balcony, I would walk how many ever steps I did and then write it in my diary. And that became the thing that I would do, you know, like every day, like that I would get to walk, I would write down. And also, I didn't have a, you know, I mean, at that time, there was not really good physiotherapy. If that same accident had happened now, it would have been very different. But yeah, I think it was a struggle, but it also really ignited a passion within me for movement, for exercise, for wanting to find a way to heal myself, from where spirituality, yoga, all of this, you know, that sparked that for me.
So as a 21-year-old girl, it would have been, you know, while your friends were partying or whatever, it must have been so hard for you. You would have gone through a lot at that point, because all your friends would have been out and you're you know, not able to walk, because doctors said that you wouldn't be able to have full movement of your legs and you wouldn't be able to walk properly. What was going on in your head through that?
I mean, like I said, there was a very deep, like, sense of purposelessness. You know what I mean? There was no sense of purpose. Like, I felt like, what am I, every morning waking up and just not being able to walk? I don't know. Now it sounds very dramatic, but that's how I felt. I felt very strongly a deep sense of sadness. My friends were all moving on, and I felt a sense of, you know, isolation. I felt like they couldn't connect to the space that I was in, to what I was going through, even though, you know, they're like lovely, they're still my great, still some of my best friends, but they just couldn't understand what I was going through, right? So there was a very deep sense of loneliness. And yeah, so, and also I really wanted to study economics, and it was the final year of my college, so I was also left behind in everything that was going on academically. And so suddenly I was just left behind in terms of what I wanted to do with my work, with my career, what was going on socially, you know, with having friends. So there was a deep sense of feeling left behind while everybody was moving on.
So how you found, like, how did you find the book? Like, you know, like, how did you find these books? Because this was pre-internet era, right? So it's not like you did a Amazon search and you found the best-selling author or something. So how did you chance upon these books?
So I did this course in pranic healing, and pranic healing is very similar to Reiki. They talk a lot about energy, and they talk that they say that everything is vibration. And even though we believe everything is this material being, a material, you know, everything is material, it tells you there's actually an energy field, you know, which is much more real than the physical material that we see. So, you know, one of the books recommended was Autobiography of a Yogi, because he talks a lot about energy and being able to manifest miracles through that process of connecting to energy. So I think that was the reason why I started reading that book. The other book I read was this one called Celestine Prophecy. And that again talks about energy, and also that also was a very similar, not similar, but it sparked my interest in this whole concept of vibration and energy.
So in all of this, then you started going to Rishikesh and trying to find yoga. So again, how did you find, I mean, was it, who did you ask?
So again, it was a long process. From the time that I had my accident to when I eventually would do Hatha Yoga, that was like almost 1.5 years to 2 years. My parents have a house in Dehradun. They had, so, you know,
this is which year? This is 1999?
99, I guess, 98, 99.
Okay.
And so they could see that I was quite depressed. So then we went to Dehradun, and, you know, I would just do my walking and whatever with the crutches around. And I think I read about Hatha Yoga somewhere, and I started doing a little bit of very basic asana sitting in the bed. And, you know, it's very strange, but because I was reading this book and there was this whole curiosity about manifestation, and my world was very kind of taken over by this whole autobiography for yogi concept. I remember I even met a sadhu, because Dehradun has a lot of this, has a lot of spirituality. I even remember meeting a sadhu when there was a lot of mystical stuff, I would say, in retrospect, that started happening for me. A lot of mystical experiences. And Rishikesh is very close to Dehradun. So I just, for some reason, I was reading this word yoga somewhere. I read it, like maybe there was some yoga classes in Dehradun or something. And so I told my dad that I really want to go to Rishikesh, because Rishikesh was supposed to be the
yoga capital.
Yeah. And so I told my dad I want to go to Rishikesh. And so we went there. They drove me there. It's like a 45-minute drive. And I remember, there was a lot of ashrams where you could learn it. It wasn't as easily accessible as Rishikesh is now. It was very simple back then. So you had to go looking. And so my parents have always been extremely supportive of all my idiosyncrasies, like no matter what I want to do, they support me. So when I said I want to go to Rishikesh and go and try, finding some kind of yoga, because I was still walking with crutches, they were like, yeah, sure. Anything that would spark a positive emotion in me. So they're like, yeah, let's go. And my dad is very adventurous. So he's like, okay, let's go. So we went to Rishikesh. I found this ashram. And, I remember, I think I did a 1-week course there or something. And then I got back and it was very simple. It was no standing poses. It was all just on the bed. Very simple Hatha yoga poses. And so I started doing them by myself. And, I think it's something about the breath and the connection of the breath to the movement. And it just gave me a deep sense of peace. And for the first time, I felt, at peace with myself. And so I guess from then on, that whole journey began. There was it was first that Hatha yoga stuff. For a long time, it was that. Then I remember when Shivananda, and, from then on, eventually I landed up in Mysore.
So, you've mentioned that you saw somebody practice Ashtanga in Shivananda. Who was that? Do you remember? It was just
very random.
Random.
Very random. So Shivananda Yoga Ashram at that time was very alternative. Yoga was not a mainstream career. I remember telling my brother I want to become a yoga teacher, and he was like,
and this is just for audience sake. This is way before the yoga boom happened and all of that, right?
You would be a yoga teacher if you were like, in your classes, you'd have like really old people or, like grandmothers and stuff in 90s, coming to practice yoga. It was more like that. It was not like hip and cool and any of this, for sure. So when I told my brother, and I was doing economic honors, and before that I wanted to go to London School of Economics. So when I told my brother, I want to become, my family, I told my parents, I want to be a yoga teacher and I want to go to Shivananda Yoga Ashram to do a teacher training. And my dad was like, my brother was like, so are you going to buy a cycle and have this jhola and then wear a kurta and just go around try and teach people classes? And, he's like, this is the end of you. So there was a lot of resistance to that idea. But, I've always been very rebellious. If somebody tells me don't do this, for sure, I'm going to do it.
You're going to go and do that and prove them wrong.
For sure. So, when everybody was like, don't do this, I was like, no, for sure. Now I'm definitely going to do this. So that's how I finally ended up in Kerala at the ashram. And the ashram had very alternative people. There was a lot of bohemian, more hippie kind of people. And it was very, there was no internet and stuff. So it was in the jungle. It was pretty wild. And I remember watching, we would do we had a pretty tight schedule, but I remember one of the guys on my course, watching him do the primary series, and he had put his mat out in the jungle. And so when I watched him, I was like, this is the most mystical thing I've ever seen. It was like something which I thought, the ancient yogis must have been doing, in the jungle with the animals. And it was it really, I remember it was such a riveting sight for me. And I was like, this is what I want to learn. Also, it had this beautiful sense of flow. Hatha yoga is quite static, which I still love. But it didn't satiate this sense of flow for me, which when I watched Ashtanga, I was like, this just has something so mystical.
Hmm. Hmm.
And not just mystical, but this sense of fluidity. For me, I
Hmm.
was attracted to that because
Hmm.
also I was very attracted to dance. So for me,
Hmm.
watching that was like watching somebody just kind of flowing. And
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
was what sparked me. I was like, this is what I want to learn.
So you reached Mysore,
Yeah.
and your first teacher was Shri K. Patabi Joyce.
No, actually,
And
my first teacher was Sharat.
okay, so I think you went to a beginners class.
Yeah, so there was an Indian course. I mean, they called it Indian and Westerner, but it was not really Indian and Westerner. It was more
Huh.
like beginners in the evening
Hmm.
with Sharadji, and in the morning was with with Patabi Joyce, Guruji, with
Hmm.
all the Westerners, because they were the ones who were more into because it was a very strong practice. You know, it was not easy.
Hmm.
So in the beginning, I was so intimidated. It was all just Westerners, you know. So I
Hmm.
was like, okay, I didn't know the series, so I
Hmm.
ended up in Sharad, you know, with Sharad ji, and he was so strict. I remember it was like
Hmm.
just every day, and I was pretty flexible because I had done
Hmm.
this Shivananda course. I could already
Hmm.
do splits and whatever, and I
Hmm.
thought I was like
Hmm.
really cool because I could do splits.
Hmm.
So I would keep asking him like, now when can I do more? But
Hmm.
he would just make me do only Surya Namaskar A. And I
Okay.
was like, you know, like I need to do more. I've come all the way to
Hmm.
Mysore. I was living in this really simple, like it was the simplest place I was living in. Every day I'd have to walk. You know, it was a struggle. I didn't have any
Hmm.
friends. And
Hmm.
I had this burning desire to learn. I was like, I'm not
Hmm.
going to just keep doing Surya Namaskar A. And he was like,
Hmm.
no, that's it. He was very strict.
Strict. Hmm.
And so I, you know, decided that I'm going to go and join the main group. And
Shala.
that's when I went, yeah, the main shala. So I went and I spoke to Guruji, to Patabi Joyce in the morning, and I was like, can I come? He thought I was Israeli because, you know, he had not seen an
Okay.
Indian girl who looked like with a tattoo and, you know, didn't look, I was wearing these hippie pants and whatever. So he thought I was like Israeli, and he was like, okay, come.
Hmm.
And so the next day I landed up, and, you know, it was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was like the Fight Club of yoga because it was in this old shala. You know, it was really in the small streets of Mysore with nothing written. Nobody knew where it was except the auto rickshaw drivers.
Hmm.
You entered, and there was a really small room. And at that time, it was so small, only 12 or 13 people could practice at one time.
Hmm.
So I remember having to sit on the steps.
Hmm.
And I was sitting on these steps, and everybody on the steps looked pretty rebellious and radical. People with piercings and tattoos, and, you know, I was like, and then I could hear the sound of the breathing from the room, and the room was
Hmm.
really dark.
Hmm.
And it was just like, this is where I belong.
Hmm.
You know, like
Hmm.
if you were a bit of a rebel
Hmm.
and you were wanting, I don't know, there was just something about this very edgy and rebellious, and at the same time so mystical, you know.
Right.
For
Yeah.
me, it was just like I was just so attracted to that, just listening to the sound of the breath, this
Hmm.
kind of silence and the sound of the breath, and all these people performing really like they looked like they were all levitating because they were all very advanced practitioners. So it was like
Hmm.
that kind of just got me hooked. Yeah, I do believe in the concept of moksha. Somebody's asked me that.
So,
Yeah.
you were the only Indian at that time.
I had a very good friend called Mandira. Her name is
Hmm.
Mandira Sharma. Now I don't know if she practices Ashtanga. She, you know, she had a bit of a, she went in a different direction, but it was basically her and me. But she continued practicing with Sharadji.
Vishalji. Hmm.
Yeah, but it
Hmm.
was basically both of us. We were like the bad Indian girls, you know, like rebellious, and, you know, like we were the two of us. So it was just but in the morning batch with, you know, it was just me. I was the only Indian back then.
So, Shri Patabi Joyce taught you the primary series in a week,
Yeah.
and you went to second in the second week.
Yeah, yeah.
What did that feel like?
You know, back then, for me, I was not even aware what primary series, what intermediate, whether there was this hierarchy. For me, that didn't matter. You know, I was 22 probably. Somebody's asking me how old was I? Or 23. Um, for me, that hierarchy and intermediate, primary, very honestly, honest to God, it didn't matter at all. It was just like, I love this practice, and it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And but I told some friends of mine, I had this friend who was like Portuguese and he was like a bad boy. And I told him like I'm got this pose called Pashasana, and he was like, "Oh my God, what? You're starting second?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like he was just in awe, and I was like, "Wow, maybe this is really cool or whatever, right?" But um, it was intense. It was really intense. I remember like finishing practice and feeling like destroyed because I'd never done such advanced poses I'd never done such advanced poses. So for me, it was like feeling pretty destroyed. But at the same time, I'm a very pitta passionate person. So I love it when it's intense and it's on the edge. So I loved it. I was thriving on that intensity. So it was just perfect for me.
So describe Mysore in those days. What was it like?
I mean, it's still such a beautiful place. There's something so beautiful and old, ancient. I wouldn't say ancient, but it has this old world charm.
Hmm.
I remember I'm also somebody, I don't know, maybe in my last birth, I was a sadhu or something, I don't know.
Hmm.
But I'm very attracted to people who are a bit of like wanderers.
Hmm.
I mean, now it's impossible, but I used to love walking on the streets.
Hmm.
I also love looking at visual images. I love the whole aesthetic of a very beautiful Indian town. So
Hmm.
I remember it was just very simple in the morning when you'd walk and you would,
Hmm.
go for your yoga practice. You could hear the Suprabhatam
Hmm.
and you
Hmm.
could smell coffee coming,
Hmm.
filter coffee being
Hmm.
made,
Hmm.
and just women in beautiful, even now it's like very similar, there's like they just wear the most beautiful saris. Even the most simple people selling flowers are
The
just,
aroma of jasmine outside the
yeah,
temple.
and also
Yeah.
the women just selling flowers, selling
Hmm.
vegetables. I love that.
Hmm.
Even now I love it,
Hmm.
like going and
Hmm.
chatting with them. And
Hmm.
it just had this beautiful charm, and the shala was beautiful. And I was just
Hmm.
suddenly exposed to a whole different world, meeting people from
Hmm.
all over the world, having conversations which were just like, which I was not being able to have in my mainstream life. And, everybody was interested in things which I had this major spark for. And I just felt like I could really thrive in this
Hmm.
environment.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, you've mentioned,
Yeah, all those who wander are not lost for sure. And nor do those who wonder are lost, because I love to wonder and I love to wander. Those two kind of go together.
so you mentioned that when you were practicing, you didn't know, it's very different. Your practice was
There's
very different
Maria
from what.
there. Oh my God. So that's Holistics Maria. And can I just go a little bit on a diversion? So
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Maria, from people who don't know, she's called Holistics. That's hell yes, Holistics. Yeah. So she lives in New York. And I remember seeing her in Mysore.
Hmm.
And she was just wearing this beautiful red gypsy skirt. I don't know if she
Hmm.
was barefoot. I'll have to ask her, but she looked like she was kind of barefoot. And
Hmm.
she just had this wild, like, kind of hair. And she had a little baby with her. And I was like, she had just come out of the shala. And I remember seeing her. And this was way after, by the way, not this was
Not
in the
in your
new
first year
shala.
of trip. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, not the
Hmm.
new shala, but the new
Hmm.
shala, the
Hmm.
old new shala.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember seeing her with this wild gypsy girl, and I was like, she was holding a baby. She had a baby, and I think somewhere that kind of sparked the fact that I could have a baby, because she looked like a free spirit, and she just had this baby, and she had a flower. I think I'm making it up, but I think you had a flower behind your ear, and I was just like, she looks so free spirited and gypsy, and she has this baby. So it changed the perception for me, and I think that was more than 10 years back. So that was that. Sorry,
Wow.
that was
Yeah.
off the topic a bit.
No, not at all. So tell me, you've always, unlike what your practice is now, it's like super alignment and all of that. You've
Mm.
mentioned that in those
Yeah.
times it wasn't that way, and
Yeah, I
and
think,
you felt you had a lot of people who made fun of you. The Westerners made fun of you about your alignment and your practice. Sorry.
I mean,
Uh,
I wouldn't say Westerners, because honestly, I mean, I'm married to a Westerner. My baby is half Australian. That's Holistics, by the way, for the person who was asking, the woman from New York. Her name is Holistics. Yeah, I mean, it was not about the
Other
aliens or West.
practitioners, other practitioners.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very simple practice, very, very simple. I didn't even know like Trikonasana is meant to look the way it's meant to look.
Hmm.
And to be very honest, I didn't care. You
Hmm.
know, for me, it was,
Hmm.
I loved the physicality of the practice, but I was looking for for peace,
Hmm.
which I still am. You know, for
Hmm.
me,
Hmm.
um, I love the element of challenge, but for me,
Hmm.
eventually, it's a practice which connects me to devotion. You know, it
Hmm.
connects me to, I don't know what the word would be, God or the source or whatever the word is. I don't want to
Hmm.
define it and label it. But for me,
Hmm.
it's still a practice which connects me to my heart and connects me to my source. And for me, the alignment back then didn't matter. But
Hmm.
maybe for other people it mattered. But I
Hmm.
don't think Guruji or you know, I don't think Sharath honestly cares that much about alignment. So, for him, the main principles were vinyasa. Can you be concentrated within the practice? And alignment is another tool. It's a tool that
Hmm.
helps you bring you back and ground you. But
Hmm.
for me, it's about that. It's
It's
something
about a
that just,
mindfulness.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
Hmm.
about a practice to keep me connected and embody. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
to be embodied.
Hmm.
And for me, being embodied is very important now to stay
Hmm.
grounded. And I
Hmm.
don't want to just be flying up in the clouds thinking that's spirituality. I
Hmm.
have a baby, I can't be like all up there. For me,
Hmm.
being spiritual is also being extremely grounded. And for me,
Hmm.
sometimes all those principles of alignment help me really center myself and concentrate. But I don't think they need to take over.
Hmm.
You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I don't think they need to take over where that becomes the goal.
So, how did your journey from Hyderabad to Bombay happen?
Ah, okay. So I don't remember how, but I think this was way after again.
Hmm.
I remember I came to Bombay. I was very fascinated by Bombay.
Which year was this?
My audience is very limited. Why is it limited? I don't know why, but anyway. Um, so for me, when I
Which year
first
was
came,
this? Sorry. Which year was this?
I think maybe 2000. I'm terrible, with dates and years,
Years.
and maybe it was
Okay.
2006 or
Okay.
2005 or something.
Okay. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I remember coming to Mumbai, and there was, for me, there was just something I loved about it.
Hmm.
I remember walking in, not Chowpatty, but Colaba Causeway,
Hmm. Hmm.
and there was just something so edgy about
Hmm.
it. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
it was just like, again, there was an element of free spiritedness
Hmm.
about uh, that I felt when I came to Mumbai and I saw this Marine Drive and I saw Colaba Causeway and I saw all these
Hmm.
kind of wanderers again. I've always been attracted to that.
Hmm.
That's always something that has attracted me.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
remember seeing all these kind of people walking around, and I felt again very free, and I was like very attracted to this. So I
Hmm.
remember coming to Mumbai, and somebody asked me, I think maybe they saw me practicing Ashtanga in a gym or something,
Hmm.
and they asked me to come and teach a workshop. I think it
Hmm.
was Gold's Gym in,
Hmm. Bandra.
no, not in Bandra, in Marine Drive, Pedder Road, or somewhere in South Bombay. And I
Okay.
remember I came to teach this workshop.
Hmm.
And again, there was something which, I love the fact that I could just walk around in chappals. And there was just this kind of, Bombay, I really feel Mumbai has this kind of, again, like now when I look in retrospect, it is what you find, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
city can mean different things to different people. For
Hmm.
me, that moment in my life, as I
Hmm.
look at the city of Mumbai, it gave me a sense of freedom. It gave me a
Hmm.
sense that as a woman, I can be whoever
Hmm.
I want.
Hmm.
As a person, it didn't matter what college I went to, what shoes I was wearing, what handbag. Nobody cared about that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
Also, maybe it had to do with the fact that I was a complete stranger in that city.
Hmm.
There's a fact when you
Hmm.
go to a city which is not yours, people
Hmm.
don't know you at all. You don't have any family
Hmm.
background in that city. There's a sense of
Hmm.
freedom you feel.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's no
You felt
condition.
liberated.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So for me, it
Hmm.
attracted me to that city. And I remember then coming, and I used to be at the Gold's Gym and I'd be doing my yoga practice, which sounds terrible, I know, but I loved it. And I remember
Hmm.
Avanti and Yash Birla, You know, they're still great friends of mine. And I don't remember whether it was Avanti or Yash, but they watched me doing the practice and they were like, you know, can you teach us this? And I just started teaching them. And then suddenly, I don't know, it led to something. And then I was teaching a class at Go's Gym. And it led to more and more and more. And eventually, you know, I moved to Mumbai and I started teaching full time. And, you know, it was fun. It was I had a great time because I was teaching a lot and just leading a really free life.
So, how did this whole privates and all of that? How did all of that start?
So I was living in as a paying guest in. This is really funny, but I was living as a paying guest in Homi Adijania's mom's house. He's a director, and there I think Anaita Shroff. She saw me and she met me. I know I've always admired her sense of, you know, style. She just has this really edgy sense of style, and so I think she saw the body that I had, which was kind of like a fit, lean kind of body. And so eventually she recommended me to train Aishwarya Rai for Dhoom 2 because for that film they wanted to have, you know, they wanted Aishwarya to play a character where she was kind of a dancer or something. And so, you know, Anaita recommended me as the one to personally train Aishwarya, and so it led to that, and then that took off for a lot of other things. Oh my God, that's Anaita there! Yes, so you led me to the whole. You know, it took me in a different. That's crazy. That's so bizarre. Yeah, so it led me to a totally different direction.
So in all of this, where did Mark come onto the scene?
Oh my God. So you want the honest answer.
Yeah.
So when I went for the first time to Mysore, you know, in that room, when I saw these like not celebrity, but these superstar yogis, it's chance. Oh my God, that's so crazy. And Aita's like, she just chanced upon it. I'm going to take a little detour.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was really because of, you know, her recommending me. And oh my God, Anna Scott. Oh, so many people. Yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons where then Mumbai became, you know, I got a lot of work from that. I really owe a lot of the celebrities I taught completely to Anaita, and I felt that kind of led me to that. So just going on that. But anyway, coming back to Mark. So when I went to Mysore the first time, I remember in that room when I saw those advanced practitioners.
This is the very first time?
Yeah, the first trip, 2001 or 2002. I saw Mark with his back then girlfriend, Jenny. And they were like, that's so sweet, Anaita. No, you're amazing. I've always loved her sense of style, which is very Indian and boho, which is also what I love. Yeah, so back in that room, coming back to that window, I saw Mark and his back then his girlfriend Jenny. They were practicing, and I was like, oh my God, these are like the superstars, because they had a very advanced practice, and I was like a newbie. But for me, it was like Mark Sir, you know, in my head. And I remember there's a little restaurant in Mysore, not right, it's like a homestay kind of place called Sandhya. Even now when I go, I love eating. Anybody who goes to Mysore has to go. Sandhya has the most magical hand. She's this most beautiful woman. She cooks food. It's like home cooked food. So I remember I was at Sandhya's eating with my mad friend Mandira. If she's there, I want to say hi to her. And we ended up seeing Mark, and I was like, I want to come and practice with you. But for me, it was like he was an amazing practitioner. Nothing beyond that. Like,
you weren't hitting on him.
You weren't not at all. He was a very good boy.
Okay.
So for me, I was more into like the bad boys. So anyway, I you know, plus I really respected his practice, and so, you know, I would love to come and practice with you and your girlfriend. So that was 2001, and then years after, there was nothing after. Like, it was, I swear, I promise you, there was no attraction, nothing. It was just me wanting to learn, and that's it. And then back much out, and then after that, that was just like we spoke for probably a minute at Sandhya's, and that's it. And then probably it was 2000, and I can't remember, and I'm terrible with years, but maybe it was 2011 or 10 or 8, I can't remember. But I was in Goa at this restaurant called Beam Me Up, which I love still. It's this incredible vegan restaurant. I was sitting and eating my tofu salad, and I remember I was writing in my journal. I was reading this book called by Abraham and Esther Hicks called "Ask and You Will Receive," and I was writing all these points about somebody that I want to meet as a soulmate, not even as a boyfriend or any of that, just as a soulmate. And I remember looking up, and Mark was sitting on another table way across with all his buddies. And I was practicing with my teacher Rolf back then in Goa. And I remember Mark was like checking me out full on, which he will admit to even now. He was like, who's this bohemian Indian girl? So he started asking all his friends and whatever. And so then eventually he made his way to me, and he was like, he asked me, and he remembered that I was this Deepika that he had met back in 2001 or 2002 in Mysore. So then he asked me like, hey, are you that same girl? And I was like, in Mandrim Ashwim? No, back then it was in Vagato.
Beam Me Up?
Beam Me Up, yeah. So then he asked me like whatever, he asked me a few questions. I think he was hitting on me, I think. But I thought he was just, randomly chatting. And then I remembered him and his girlfriend. I was like, so how's your girlfriend? Jenny. Because I remember them being like the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie of yoga. And I remember he said to me, she left me. And, he had like tears in his eyes. And I was like, oh my God, such a sweet puppy. He's so sweet. And it kind of like melted my heart. And much later, I found out he was not crying or anything. He had just like some dust had gone into his eyes. So he gotten all misty. So it was not like he was, but in my heart, I was like, he's such a sweet guy. He's so sweet, like he's such a puppy or whatever. I felt like he was this very pure, beautiful, innocent soul. And I remember there was no attraction, but clearly I had this moment where I felt like I've known this soul from another life. And it was a deep knowing. I can't express it in words, but I felt like I know this person, this soul from another life. And it was just a very, very deep feeling. And then he asked me out. Our first date was at in Goa at this, I love hippie places, so he asked me out to, I know it's such a good pickup line, isn't it? So then Anna Scott, yeah. So then he was like, can I take you out the next day? So I was like, yeah, sure. And I was still thinking it was in my head, I was not thinking it's like I'm dating him or whatever. So he took me to a juice bar at a place in Chapora, which is like a really hippie place. Everybody's smoking a joint and everybody's got these big dreadlocks. It's like a full-on old hippie place. So he took me to this place and we had a juice. And I remember him asking me, he's like, wait for this, Anna. So he asked me, like, this is the first time we're hanging out. He's like, do you want to travel the world and teach yoga with me? Did you catch that? Yeah, Ganesh Juice.
Yeah, okay, now the network's fine.
Is everybody back?
Yeah, everyone's back.
Okay. So yeah, he asked me, he's like, do you want to travel the world and teach yoga with me, in his sweet, innocent way? And I just giggled so much because I was used to Mumbai and, very different kind of way of people talking. And I was like, I said to him, I was like, is that your pickup line? Because it's like he was so transparent, there was no like, Yamachi doesn't make me. It was just like so transparent, and I found it so like sweet, and there was no like pretending and like acting cool or anything. So I just found it so endearing and innocent. And from then on, we started like chatting a lot. And for a long time, we were just, and the next day he was going for a retreat where he was going to be with no internet for the next 3 weeks and no phone, nothing. So after that, we didn't talk for the next 3 weeks. And then when he came out, he went to Sri Lanka and we were chatting a lot. And then eventually he came to Mumbai and blah, blah, blah.
So there was this picture of you and Mark holding hands in a tortoise pose. In, I think, Supta Kurmasana.
Yeah. In Supta Kurmasana. In Kurmasana, yeah.
Yeah. Who took that picture? How did that happen?
I think it was at Purple Valley, and we were practicing with Sharadji, and it was a lead primary, and I think I can't remember who took the picture, and the rest is history. Yeah, I can't remember who took the picture, but maybe I think it was the manager who was working at Purple Valley. I can't remember who took it, but yeah, it was at his workshop.
So you did a lot of hiking and trekking, even in all of those years when you were in Bombay. You've had some mad stories. Some Nepali guy running, chasing you up the mountain, and what a Shanti party. You want to tell us these two stories?
Oh my God, those are two different stories.
Yeah.
So first story is I was in Dharamshala. And I've always loved the mountains, and I've always been a hippie. So I was staying in Dharamshala, but Upper Dharamshala, Dharamkot, which is filled with a lot of Israelis. And for some reason back then, everybody used to think I was Israeli because they had not seen Indians with girls with tattoos, and I had piercings and all that, blah blah blah. So I remember every morning at 6 o'clock, I'd be walking to my practice to McLeodganj to do my yoga practice, and there'd be a lot of people at the same time coming back from a rave. And so I remember coming back, there was this girl who thought that I was going for a rave, and she would just ask me, she's like, do you want Shanti Party or you want Party? And I think she meant like some ecstasy pill or something. I don't know what, but I was like, definitely Shanti Party, because that's where I'm headed for my yoga practice. But yeah, that's one story. The other stories I remember this is way back, like long back. And yeah, I love McLeodganj. Somebody just said McLeodganj, beautiful place. I don't have a little boy, I have a little girl.
She has a little girl.
Yeah, her name is Devi Tara. She watches us practicing every morning. So I think she already, somewhere in her subconscious, knows all the poses and knows a lot about everything about yoga. So coming back to Nepal, so I remember telling a friend of mine back in college, I was like, let's go to Nepal. So she's like, yeah, cool. But she was not even remotely into like hiking or anything. So I told her, let's go for shopping to Kathmandu. Because back in that time, you didn't have like, all this kind of funky stuff in India.
Yes.
So, like, yeah, cool,
so a lot of the cool stuff was all in Kathmandu for the shopping.
Yeah, so she's like, let's go to Kathmandu. So I said, yeah, cool, let's go. But I was not going for shopping. I was going because I wanted to trek. So then in Kathmandu, I was like, let's go to, what's the place? I've forgotten now, which is the base of all the treks. If anybody's from Nepal, I can't remember the name. Pokhara. Yeah, so we hitched on a truck, on the top of a truck, and we went to Pokhara. Back then, I used to love hitching, like from trucks and buses and whatever. I would always love to sit on top of the roof. So we were sitting on top of the roof, and we went to Pokhara. And when we were in Pokhara, my whole motive was to do Annapurna circuit, but because I had nobody else to do it with, I would keep making up stories to get her to come with me. So I said to her, okay, let's go for a really short trek. She's like, okay, cool. Like I said, it's a one-day trek. So she's like, okay, cool. So I got a guide, and basically I got her on this trek, and she had never trekked in her life. So every time when we were doing the trek for the day, she would be like 3 or 4 hours behind me. So eventually I told the guide, you be with her, I'll do my own thing. So I remember one of the days we were walking through really thick jungle, and it was monsoon, so there were leeches everywhere. And the guide said to me, you know, don't trek alone because this is really dangerous. Wait for me. I was like, I can't wait 4 hours, so let me just do my own thing. So there was a local guy passing by. He's like, okay, why don't you get him to walk with you? So I remember we were walking up this hill. I had my backpack, which was really heavy. It was raining like crazy. So, you know, the kind of
cheaters.
raincoat wind cheater thing on. And there was just leech everywhere. Yeah. And this guy just suddenly asked me, he's like, Madam, aap mujhse shaadi karega? And I remember
Which is, for those who don't understand, will you marry me?
Yeah. And he had this kukri, and I was just like, you know, part of me was like thinking maybe he's joking. But you know, when I looked into his eyes,
kukri is like, a dagger for those who, it's a dagger.
Like a sickle. Yeah. And I remember looking at him, and there was nobody. I had not seen anybody on that trek for like hours before, and I couldn't see anybody after, like way after. It was raining like crazy, and I was like, I don't think he's joking, and I don't think I should wait to find out. So I just remember I started running, and he just started running after me. At some point, there was a snake that went over my foot. I mean, it was like the craziest adventure. It was like falling in slush and like,
oh my God,
beaches. Thankfully for the fact that I'd been, you know, I was pretty fit. So
yeah,
finally I got to a little, a small little hut somewhere. I went in and I got some, you know, that saved me.
Wow.
So I've had a lot of those kind of crazy adventures.
So I'm going to ask you a question which a viewer has sent me, because now we just have 4 minutes left. So
okay.
Yeah. So you know, Indians often say that we are not represented enough in yoga. In your opinion, why is that? What is your because you did yoga way before it was cool. So why do you feel that there is a lack of Ashtanga teachers in India? Now it has changed, but
yeah, I mean, going back to how it started in the 60s or 70s, you know, there was a huge hippie movement in America, and there was a lot of, you know, there was also Woodstock, there was a lot of drugs, there was a lot of people, the Beatles, people were seeking salvation, and I do think it was happening in India as well, but there was already a lot of beautiful teachers already here in India. So I feel personally that there was a huge tribe of these kind of seekers, or, you know, people who, bohemian hippies, who came and finally found Pattabhi Jois. And because of that, I think he started going a lot to the West. So I think that had something to do with the fact that a lot of his main teachers or his main practitioners were Westerners. You know, there was like that whole space of you know, those really advanced practitioners. And so I think that was one of the reasons that there was a huge amount of Westerners who got attracted to Ashtanga. I don't think back then there was so many Indians who were kind of getting pulled towards this practice. It was a very, very intense practice. You know, it was not for a householder. That's what I guess some people felt. But I think it's changing, you know, like more and more I see so many beautiful Indian practitioners. There's so many incredible young people I see who are practicing. Also, when I go to, like, you know, I think we're just kind of seeing a very small section. Like if you go to Bombay and if you go to so many places, there's so many beautiful Indian practitioners who are probably not on the internet, who are not famous, but they're super amazing practitioners. So I don't think that there's not enough, you know, Indians who have a great practice.
No, what I meant was the Ashtanga.
Yeah, and of course, because back then there was those star, you know, there's a famous video with all these star practitioners, so that attracted a lot of Westerners.
Right?
Yeah. So I think it's changing, you know, there's more and more and more, and there's like these incredible young people coming along, not just young, but incredible Indian practitioners. I'm blown away by not just their physicality, you know, for me, that's not what attracts me. I'm very blown away by their sense of devotion. I'm so blown away by this.
Deepika, I'm going to
sincerity that
cut you. I'm going to
Yeah.
cut you, and we're going
Yeah.
to take this conversation the next time because we have 18 seconds left.
Okay.
And so I want to thank you for today's conversation, and we're going to explore a lot more questions with you the next time.
Yes.
And thank you for this conversation, and thank you everybody who joined.
Thank you
And
for
please
making
send-
it so much fun.